in this video, I'm going to talk about 5 punctuation marks, okay? And you might be surprised that I'm going to begin with the period. And you might think, well, the period is so simple, you know, we just put it at the end of sentences. Why do you want to spend time on that? Because I want to tell you something important about the period, okay? But first, the period is the punctuation symbol that marks the end of a command, which is an imperative sentence, or a statement, which is a declarative sentence, okay? Now, you'll notice that I have the subjects in yellow and all the verbs in green. But I have other words underlined. Can somebody guess why I might have those words underlined? What are these words? They're nouns. They're nouns. But they're not subject nouns. They're object nouns. They're object nouns. Nouns that are not subjects are object nouns. Maybe they're, here's a prepositional phrase. This is the object of that preposition. So I want you to notice, you know, which ones are subjects and which ones are not subjects, okay? All right. So here are 3 commands. Please don't do that. Sit down, please. And I have included some, what I think are interesting sentences from other writers. This one says, do not look where you fell, but where you slipped. This is an African proverb, an old saying from Africa. You know, like the saying in Spanish that our parents tell us sometimes, they say, dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. An old saying. So this is an old saying. And this one is kind of interesting because it tells, don't concentrate on where you fell, where you failed, but where it was that you slipped, where it was that you started to go wrong. And that's what this says. Okay? So, this is a command because it says don't look. Don't look. And so, this is a subordinating conjunction, where you fell, but where you slipped. 2 subordinating conjunctions. I should have colored them. And in commands, we hope you remember, the subject is not visible. It's not visible. But it's understood, huh? Yeah. It's understood. The subject, you. Very good. So they have periods at the end. We call it end punctuation. End the period. We say it's end punctuation. And here are declarative sentences, statements. I'm late. It's raining. Here's another sentence from this famous scientist. He was concerned about the universe, not only the planets, but the galaxies and things like this. And so, someplace, he said, logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. So this is, anyway, this is a quote from Albert Einstein, and they have periods, and that's it, you know. Now, these sentences could easily also have exclamation marks. And this exclamation mark just indicates more emotion. More emotion. If we say, please don't do that, that would be an exclamation mark. Sit down, please, you know, more emotion, more emotion. I'm late, it's raining. It can be anger, or it can be happy emotion, but emotion. And so we use exclamation points. Okay, so now this is the principal point I want to tell you about the periods. And that's when you write a group of words that should not have a period, because it's not a complete sentence. And so, from the papers that I'm returning today, I thought I would pick some and put them here. And so you see the first one. Being that the Resnicks had no senior water rights. Now, it looks like a complete sentence because it has a subject and it has a verb. But it's not a complete sentence. Can you tell why not? That. Subordinating conjunction creates a dependent clause. This does not deserve that. It's a sentence fragment. Okay? So that's what I want you to think about. When I put a period here, is that a complete sentence? Can you tell if it is not? Here's the second one. Being the same type, same writer. Being that every year there were less delta smells because, same kind of word, because of the huge pumps that capture, what kind of word is this?
The chameleon?
Huh?
The chameleon?
Chameleon.
The chameleon?
Chameleon.
Yes, the chameleon, but how is it being used here? Isn't there one, here's one way. Is this the same way?
No, it's different.
What is it? What is this?
Subject.
It's a subject, yes. But how is it being used? It's being used as a relative pronoun. This is a relative pronoun. This is a subordinating conjunction. Yeah, it's the chameleon. Okay? So you have dependent clause here, you have a dependent clause here, and you have another dependent clause. I'm sorry. Two dependent clauses. Three of them. And three dependent clauses do not make a complete sentence. So again, this does not deserve a period. It doesn't deserve a period. And I have two more examples. All this to ensure a good preparation for their workers as more and more jobs in the company are more mechanized. Has a subject, has a verb, but it also has subordinating conjunction. It makes this a dependent clause. There is no other subject or verb. Sentence fragment. It doesn't deserve a period. It's not a complete sentence. Next example, as part of its focus on the welfare of its workers. Same thing. Subordinating conjunction, dependent clause, sentence fragment. So these, to fix them, they have to be attached to a complete sentence. They can usually be attached to the sentence that comes before or the sentence that comes after. Okay? If you put it with the sentence that comes after, you would put a comma right here. And then you attach it to the next sentence. Or if you're going to attach it to the sentence that comes before, take out the period in the sentence that comes before, take out the capital, and put this on it. Okay? Today we're going to practice on fixing sentence fragments. And then I'm going to give you an assignment to do at home. Okay? So this is why I wanted to talk about the period. Do I have one more? I sure do. At the beginning of one of the summaries, I saw this. In the article, meet the California couple who uses more water than every home in Los Angeles combined. Part 3, period. Prepositional phrase and then the title of the article. No subject, no verb. A period shouldn't be there. You need an independent clause. Okay? Question?
Yeah. Why use in this case? Do you use a comma or do you just...
In this case, this should be attached to the sentence that comes after.
Okay.
Because in the sentence that comes after, the writer tells what Harkinson describes, explains. The person put the period too soon. Too soon. And, some of these could be typos. you know, something that we do quickly. Oh, we don't even realize it. We don't intend to do it. But look, there's a period and then the question mark. So this was.
What if an article it was like that, like when you get a quote and it has a period, you need to put that period inside, right?
Yes, on a quote. But if we have a parenthetical, we are going to put the parenthetical, and then we're going to put the period after the parenthetical. Yeah. Now this is a title, so there would not be a parenthetical. If this was the end of a sentence, a complete sentence, and it ended with the title of this article, we would not put a parenthetical because it's a title of an article. Okay? All right. So those are my examples of sentence fragments. We're going to practice how to fix them today. So one more. Where he got introduced by them to Claudia Nolgan, an employee of the wonderful company and a resident of Lods Hills, semicolon. Now we know that before, on both sides of the semicolon, we need complete sentences. But again, we have a subordinating conjunction. This cannot have a semicolon here because it's not a complete sentence. And then the second part begins with this word. The writer is thinking that this is a conjunctive adverb, wherein is not a conjunctive adverb.
What it means?
Wherein, in, there. Wherein. It's a kind of a legal word. They made a contract in which, but you can say they made a contract wherein he was supposed to pay her every month $100. A contract in which. Okay? So, we're going to work on avoiding sentence fragments. Alright, so let's go now to the semicolon. This is my second punctuation mark. And we have been using semicolons because we've been using conjunctive adverbs, and so we're familiar to some extent with a semicolon. We use it to separate two independent clauses that are related, that talk about the same topic. Okay? So I'll show you some examples. The first one is, this is from Steve Jobs. He was the co-founder of Apple Computers. And I'm not sure if you know, but he died of cancer. He had operations, and for a while he thought it was gone. And during that period, he made a speech at Stanford University. Steve Jobs, I don't believe, completed his education, but he was a very curious man and took classes and things. He has a very interesting story. You can look up the speech that he made at Stanford University. Steve Jobs' speech at Stanford University. Very, very simple sentences, not complicated. He's talking to one of the best universities in the United States, the graduating class of Stanford University. It's a very good speech. I've used it in class before. So he says, he's talking back about his life and how things that he learned in classes. He would go in, and just sit in, and he picked up things, and later he was able to use them when he was designing the Apple computer. And he says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. Once you've done them, you say, oh, that's how I was able to do that, So, this is the semicolon. You can see that both independent clauses are related. There are no subordinating conjunctions, Okay? So the use of the semicolon. Second example is from a psychoanalyst, famous psychoanalyst. And he once wrote, who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. A person who looks inside themselves to figure out what they are, what they do, what they want, They become more aware. Okay? So, again, the semicolon divides the two clauses. It's kind of interesting how, because who looks outside dreams. So you kind of wonder, okay, is that an independent clause? But I think it is. But, okay. So the next example, this is from an unknown author. This begins with a subordinating conjunction. When an ordinary man attains knowledge, he is a sage. A sage would be a very knowledgeable man, un sabio. When a sage attains understanding, he is an ordinary man. It's kind of something to think about, huh? So it's not just important. Let me see, I'm not sure. Let me try to interpret it. He's saying that when you learn things, well, you become knowledgeable. But knowledgeable is different from understanding. Like somebody would say, well, he knows many things, but he doesn't understand very much. Something like that. Okay? I don't know if that describes me. Okay. So this is I was looking up the people, but I didn't look him up. I don't know who he is. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The person who thinks positively, oh, it's gonna go away. The realist adjusts the sails, gets prepared for a strong wind. Okay? So these are three independent clauses. It's not a series. They're just this, semicolons. Semicolons. Okay? All right. Now, there are two other uses of the semicolon that I want to show you. And one is when there is a series, but a different kind of series. A series where one or more of the items already has commas. One or more of the items has commas inside. And so to put commas separating them becomes awkward. So I want to show you two examples. At the funeral, I talked to people I hadn't seen in years. My ex-wife, Cindy, semicolon, semicolon. My former boss, Tom Harris. And my high school wrestling coach, Terry Easton. Now, this is significant because all this semester I've been telling you, when you put a semicolon, you have to have an independent clause. Are these independent clauses? No. No verbs. No verbs. I should have underlined. This is a object, noun, object, noun, object, noun, object, noun, coach, object, noun, object, noun. Okay? But look, you have a comma right here, you have another comma right here, and you have a comma right here. If you use commas here, it's gonna give the impression that you have my ex-wife, one person, Cindy, another person, my former boss, another person, Tom Harris, another person. You see how that would be confusing? Okay? These commas separate who the person is. The name of my ex-wife, the name of my former boss, the name of my wrestling coach. That's why the commas are needed. These are appositives. Appositives. They rename the noun. Okay? So in this case, it makes sense to use the semicolon. Okay? An exception. These are phrases separated by semicolons. Now, I have a long sentence. I'm going to show it to you at the end, but I'm going to show it to you in sections, okay? To show you the semicolons. This is from one of my favorite articles. This man writes for the New York Times. He's a columnist. He's an excellent writer. Okay? And next semester we're going to read this article. Not this semester. So he begins, he's talking about boys, men, and how there are few of them in college and in high schools. Look in this classroom. 4 men. We have Alberto, but there are more women. And this is throughout. And so he's talking about this problem, why it's happening. Why it's happening. He says, schools have to engage people as they are. That requires leaders who insist on more cultural diversity in school. He's talking about the principals, the superintendents, the presidents. Okay? And he says that we should have not just teachers who celebrate cooperation, but other teachers who celebrate competition. I like this because, you know, in my class we have group competitions, right? So I like this. He says we should have teachers who honor environmental virtues, but teachers who honor not just teachers who honor environmental virtues, but teachers who honor military virtues. Military virtues. And not just curriculums that teach how to share, but curriculums that teach how to win and how to lose. And he says, not just programs that work like friendship circles, where everybody has to be nice, but programs that work like boot camp. And that's the end of the sentence. So I'll show you the whole sentence here. And I needed to show this sentence because, you know, instead of just beginning with that. But you can see, and I'm going to show you this sentence again because the list of the type of people he is advocating for is introduced by a colon. Okay? But here we're talking about the semicolon. And you can see again, this one, the first one, has a comma. They all have commas. They all have commas. So to put commas, separating, to put a comma here, to put a comma here, to put a comma here, would make it confusing. Would make it confusing. And these items are not independent clauses. They're not independent clauses. They're dependent clauses who celebrate. Okay? All right. So this is the first exception, using items in a series separated by semicolons. Okay? When there are commas in each item. The second exception for the use of the semicolon is when you write a formal letter. A formal letter. Not to a friend, not to a family member, but to an employer, to a school, to a company that you are wondering about. And this is the salutation. Salutation. You can put to whom it may concern, semicolon. The comma makes it more friendly. But since this is a formal situation, the semicolon is used to close the salutation. You can put it in small letters. Here's another one, attention personnel department. This is abbreviated, so there's a period there. Dear Mrs. Perez. If Mrs. Perez is not a relative, not a friend, you are maybe wanting to rent an apartment or something like this, or getting a job, semicolon. Okay? Dear school staff, semicolon.
Teacher, so for example, to whom it may concern, there's the beginning of the letter, then you continue with the sentence, or
the next line. The next line.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I wrote a letter on behalf of Douglas, and I put to whom it may concern. It was like a letter of recommendation, and so I used this because I don't know exactly who's going to read it, and it's a formal situation, so I use semicolons. Okay? So those are two exceptions of the semicolon. 95% of the time, you're going to have independent clause, semicolon, independent clause. But here are two exceptions, okay? All right, so now let's turn to the colon. Oh, before we turn to the colon, I want you to compare the same sentence in three ways. Here's a sentence, two independent clauses, separated by a fanboy, okay? You've seen this sentence before. The Kern Water Bank used to be publicly owned, but it is now the private property of Linda and Stu Resnick and other Kern County farmers. So this is number one. I want you to tell me if you like number one, number two, or number three. Here's number two, semicolon. Here's number three, period. How many like number one? Give me a hand. How many like number one? One. How many like number two? Let me go. This number one. One person. Anybody else? Number two. How many like number two? 3, 4, 5. And how many like this way? A few more. A few more. Okay. The advantage with a semicolon is that they're supposed to be related. With the fanboy, it kind of establishes the relationship between the two. But you can see three different ways of punctuating independent clauses. Okay? All right, so now let's go to the colon. And a colon is used to introduce a description, an explanation, or a list. Or a list. And I have already shown you the sentence written by David Brooks that has a colon introducing a list, right? And this is a Chinese proverb, a famous Chinese saying. I hear, colon, I forget. I see, I remember. I do, I understand. So you can see that the things that we hear when we learn by hearing, very little sticks. Just like I'm talking now, and I don't know how much is sticking. But you are seeing it, you are hearing it and seeing it, so maybe a little bit more. But when you do, when you write, when you practice, that's when you understand a little bit more. Okay? All right. So now, I hope you think this is a little funny. I don't know much about this man, but he made up something called Hofstadter's Law. And Hofstadter's Law says it always takes longer than you think, than you expect. Even when you take into account Hofstadter's Law. Okay? So, things take longer than we expect, right? And that's what he wanted to make a law out of. Anyway, here is an explanation. You put a colon to explain something, and this is the explanation. Okay? All right. Now, Mark Twain. Do any of you know who Mark Twain was? No one?
Like a writer, huh?
Like a writer. Famous writer. He lived in the 1800s. Good novels. Funny man. Funny man. Let's see if you think this is funny. It is by the goodness of God that in our country we have those three unspeakably precious, very, very, very important things. What are those things? Freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and the prudence never to practice either of them. So we say we are freedom of speech, but we don't really practice it. And we say we have freedom of conscience, but we don't really practice it. And so he pointed this out. And he used a colon to introduce the three. All right. Here's another guy that made a law. The technology is dominated by two types of people. Those who understand what they do not manage. They understand it, but they don't have any control over it. And the people who manage what they do not understand. This is Putt's law. And again, it's a list. It's a list of two groups of people, but it's still a list, use of the colon. Now here, this is also a sentence from David Brooks, from his article about men and boys. The education system has become culturally cohesive, rewarding and encouraging a certain kind of person, a certain sort of person, one who is nurturing, collaborative, disciplined, neat, studious, industrious, and ambitious. And David Brooks says, any boy who doesn't act like this, he ends up out of school. Okay? Now this sentence has a lot of adjectives. I thought I would give it to you in two parts and explain the adjectives. Culturally cohesive means unified, organized, no loose ends. Culturally cohesive, unified. Culturally rewarding, something that is worthwhile to do, something that is profitable. And encouraging, this one I put it underlined because I think he's using it as a gerund. Encouraging a certain sort of person. These are adjectives. These are adjectives. But I think this is a gerund. And meaning nurturing, aiding, favoring. And the second part of the sentence, a person who is nurturing takes care of others. A person who is collaborative works well with others. A person who is disciplined is organized, self-controlled. A person who is neat is tidy, ordered, clean, spotless. A person who is studious studies things in detail. A person who is industrious works hard. A person who is ambitious, highly motivated to succeed. And so you can actually cut these out and have these like this. So this is simpler, huh? This is simpler. And so when your vocabulary grows, you can use higher level adjectives. Higher level adjectives. But it's still possible to deliver the same ideas with basic words. With basic words. Okay, very good. The ellipses, the three periods, can indicate either of two things. A pause, a hesitation. Or it indicates the fact that one or more words have been edited out, have been taken out of the quoted text. And we've seen that when we study quotations, right? All right, so the first example is this one. She craved. Crave is to want very intensely. She craved one thing more than another. Pause. Sleep. Now notice, you can use the same thing with a colon. She craved one thing more than any other. Sleep. Okay? Which one do you like better? You should decide. I like this better. I like that better. Because that's what's going to make you write things the way that you like them.
The first one, I think.
You like the first one? All right. All right. Good. Good. Woody Allen is a filmmaker. And he makes films that are serious but also funny. And so I have two quotes by him that I hope you think are a little funny. He says, a Quaker is from the religion. These Quakers, a lot of times, they refuse to fight in wars. They're very pacifist. They don't like conflict. My daughter was taking an anthropology class, and they had an assignment to go look at different religions. And so my daughter went to a Quaker meeting. This was in Exeter. And at the Quaker meeting, people come and they sit them on a circle. And that's a lot of what they do. They just think. And once in a while, a person will speak and make a comment, a statement. and no one will respond. No one will respond. And it's very quiet, a time for people to meditate, the Quakers. So Woody Allen says, my luck is getting worse and worse. Last night, for instance, I was mugged by a Quaker. A Quaker would not be the type of person that would mug someone. Okay? All right. Pause. Pause. Could I put a colon there? Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Here's another one by him. Life is full of misery, loneliness, suffering. Have you experienced those things? A little bit? Yeah. Yeah. So he says, and it's all over much too soon. Life has these things, misery, loneliness, and suffering, but we want to live longer to have more of those things. All right, good. So again, I don't know if I could put a colon here because of the and. I think the ellipsis works better. Okay, I don't know this person, but he said, wisdom is knowing the right path to take. Wisdom, knowledge. Integrity is taking it. And I had this in green. That's a verb. That's a verb. I had it in green. I don't know why it's not in green now. Okay? So, pause. Possibly a semicolon would work, two independent clauses, and maybe a colon. Maybe a colon. Okay. Now, the next examples show words being taken out with the use of an ellipsis, okay? This is the complete quote. This again is Albert Einstein, the famous scientist, okay? And so when he says the universal standpoint, this is looking at you in where you are. I was having breakfast the other day, and from our kitchen in the window, I was looking at, no, it was dinner. It was dinner. And I was looking at the sun going down. And so you could see that we know that our planet revolves around the sun. And here I'm looking at the sun, and I was thinking how our planet is going around it. And so that's kind of the universal picture of we are in this planet among other planets that's going around the sun, and this sun system is part of a galaxy that has millions of suns, and some of those have planets going around them and things. That's the universal standpoint. When you look at yourself from a universal standpoint, something inside reminds or informs you that there are bigger and better things to worry about. So now, some of the words can be taken out, like these two, like this. Right? And we've been using ellipses in quotations, and so you know about those things. Here's another complete quote. Michael Landon was a famous actor. He did a show a long time ago when I was a kid called Bonanza, and then later he did another one, Little House on the Prairie. And he had cancer, and he died. And during the time when he was sick, you know, when you're really, really sick, you realize, you know, the really important things. So he said, somebody should tell us right at the start of our lives that we are dying. That then we might live to the limit. Every minute of every day. Do it, I say. Whatever you want to do, do it now. There are only so many tomorrows. Okay? I could take out some of those words and have this. Then we might live to the limit. Every minute of every day. There are only so many tomorrows. The use of the ellipses. Okay? Alright. So now, I left the last one because it's my favorite. I like the dashes. Okay? And you can do a dash like this, as you know, or like this. But a dash cannot be this, cannot be a hyphen. This is a hyphen. Two hyphens make a dash. Okay? Alright. And we use it in order to highlight or emphasize the word, phrase, or clause that appears either after the dash or between two dashes. So right off, you can see that after a dash, you can have a single word. You can have a phrase. You can have a clause. Same thing with a colon. After a colon, you can have a single word. You can have a phrase or a clause. Okay? But the dash is stronger. The dash is stronger. This is a French playwright, Albert Guignon. When everyone is against you, it means that you are absolutely right or absolutely wrong. Okay? So a dash here, you know, if we look it up, it means that you are absolutely right or absolutely wrong together, you know. So the dash highlights this, okay. This is Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor Company. And see if you can, I should have capitalized company. See if you can understand this quote. It's kind of intriguing, maybe confusing. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you are right. 5 points to somebody who can try to tell me what that means.
Basically means you can limit yourself in the way you think.
Go ahead.
It means you can limit, you're the only one who can limit yourself.
Pretty close. Pretty darn close, Angel. 5 points. Yeah. If you think you cannot do it, you're right. You're not going to be able to do it. But if you think you can do it, you have a good chance of doing it. Totally right. Totally right. And this man, he was the one that invented the supply line, where parts would go in, you know, and one worker would only put one part, and they would assemble a car in a couple of hours. In the assembly line, he created the assembly line, Henry Ford. All right, very good. So here, the dash comes. The important part is here, after the dash. After the dash, could be a comma, you know. This is a dependent clause, but a dash is stronger. Could it be a colon? I don't know. I don't think so. Not here. Okay? All right. This is an African-American economist, very controversial. Many black people do not like him because of his opinions. Okay? So one day he said, there are only 2 ways of telling the complete truth: anonymously or posthumously.
What is supposed to
Very good.
after
After you die. After you die. Yeah. There was a scientist, I think it was Copernicus, maybe not. No, he was a priest. He was a clergy person. And he wrote a book that the church, he knew the church was going to be against it in the 1500s. And people would get burned for publishing things that the church did not approve of. And so he wrote a book and he kept it for about 20, 30 years because it had a controversial. He supported the view. The church at that time stood by the idea that the sun went around the earth. That the earth was the most important thing in the universe. That the sun went around the earth. And the scientists looking up, and that doesn't... They tried to do with math, you know, the rotations of the stars and the planets. And said, that doesn't work for the sun to be going around the earth. It's the earth that goes around the sun. Well, people that said that, some of them would put in prison. Some of them were burned at the stake. They would get a lot of firewood, put that person, tie him up, and burn him alive. So this person kept this book, and published it weeks before he died. So the book came out, but he was already dead. They could not do anything to him. Smart man, smart man. Anonymously means without putting your name on it, huh? All right, very good. Use of the dash. Use of the dash. Another quote from Steve Jobs. I was lucky. I found what I love to do early in life. 2 independent clauses. 2 independent clauses. You think it would be just as good with a semicolon? It would be correct. It would be correct. I like the dash. I like the dash. I describe the dash to students as salsa, chili. If you eat, if you're Hispanic, I know some South American people, they don't like chili. But Mexican people like chili. If you eat something without chili and you like chili, it's okay, you know. But you put salsa, that is good. You see? Dashes are like that. Dashes are like that.
Gives a flavor?
Pardon me?
Gives a flavor?
Gives it flavor. Gives it power. They're like, in a way, like exclamation points. Because they add emphasis, but, there's no exclamation point here. The punch is after the dash. It's after the dash. All right. Here again, Steve Jobs, when he was in front of the graduates from Stanford University, he told them, don't be trapped by dogma. What is dogma? Dogma is living with the results of other people's thinking. This is the way we do it because it has been done this way before, and this is the way we do it. That's dogma. So you need to look at things and come up with your ideas. Evaluate and come up with your ideas. And so this is an explanation. This is an explanation. But instead of the colon, dash, dash. And this I didn't put it. This is his sentences. His sentences. Okay? And he told them, you have to trust in something. You have to trust in something. Your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. You have to trust in something. Dash. And then he put the things. Okay? All right. Now, you've seen this quote before. This is an explanation of interrupted quote. And then I put, for example, here I had a comma. For example. But you can put a dash. You can put a dash, for example, and a comma here. Okay? The dash is versatile. The dash is more versatile than the colon, more versatile than the semicolon. Okay? All right. Here's a interrupted quote. Interrupted quote. Remember, I had commas here. Well, why not dashes? Why not dashes? Could do it. Writes Harkinson. Makes it a little stronger. Makes the middle part, the introduction, stand out. Okay? All right. Now, these are three examples of what is emphasized is in between the dashes, okay? This sentence says, Miss Pratt, whom I like very much, is not my favorite teacher. Okay? So it's kind of a contrast, I like this person a lot, but she's not my favorite teacher. Okay? This is non-essential clause, right? So we could put commas, but we can make it stronger with dashes, The car which I was driving at the time suddenly caught fire, between dashes. Same sentence, the car with us inside of it suddenly caught fire. Okay? And I think I have two more. No, this is my last example. My brother, whose arrest we just witnessed, is a doctor. Kind of a contrast, huh? What's my doctor brother being arrested? Okay? So again, the dashes are helpful in highlighting things. Okay? So I want to end by telling you that the use of the semicolon, the colon, the ellipses, and especially the dash has an unbeatable guarantee. Has an unbeatable guarantee. Okay? What's the guarantee? That it'll make your writing 10 times more interesting. It'll make your sentences stand out. Because, when students in the class, when we begin the semester, the punctuation marks the students use, period, comma. Am I right? The period and the comma. And look at all the things that you are not taking advantage of. The semicolon, very important. The colon, the ellipses, and my favorite, the dash. Okay? All right, very good. Thank you.